what is going on, all of you amazing gamers out there in the world? I'm Mega Amster. Thank you for watching this YouTube video. Whether you are a new or returning viewer, appreciate you stopping by. And this was an interesting one that kind of just came up to me, this topic for this video that I wanted to discuss with all of you, because I know previously we've talked about on previous videos and in chat during live streams about games getting remakes, because we are in that big era where all these games are getting remakes, remasters. A lot of old games from your childhood and even not that far back are getting remade in newer engines with newer visuals, maybe performance upgrades, new gameplay mechanics and everything. And I kind of wanted to talk about some games that maybe aren't received as well. I'm calling them bad in the video title just to give a simple, clean word to them. These are just games that maybe were not received as well as some other entries that, maybe aren't looked the most fondly upon by general masses, but, with a game like a remake of the game could become a lot better. Some games that have already happened to that already recently, just to name a few examples, because this is not an uncommon occurrence. It's less common than remaking good games for sure. But for example, Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection that came out a few years ago. Apparently that's actually a really, really well-made version of the original Ghosts and Goblins, which, if you know my thoughts on that game is, I hate that game. That game is brutal. Not horrible, but brutal to play through. The Castlevania, I believe it was the arcade game. The original wasn't great, but in the Dominus collection, they have almost like a remake of the arcade game, I believe it is, which is really, really cool to see. And it's actually really good, which is cool to see. Yooka-Laylee Replay is a more recent one where the original game wasn't received super well, and it hasn't come out yet, of course, but Playtonic is pretty much remaking the original Yooka-Laylee. Of course, modifying the visuals, making it more for current generations of platforms, but also adding some new stuff like extra map features and things like that to make challenges even more doable. I don't know exactly how much new content they're adding. Let me know in the comments below if you happen to know. But that's at least cool. I guess that's more of a remaster of sorts. And I mean, then there have been cases of these companies re-releasing a new version of a game that's not quite a remake, but I think the big one for I could think of is Final Fantasy XIV. If anybody remembers, when that game originally launched, it was not received well. It was kind of a mess, and then they created Realm Reborn, which was massively successful, and it keeps continuing to get more and more successful to this day. Same thing with a game like No Man's Sky that originally came out, wasn't received well, and then definitely got a lot more popular as time went on. But that's really not a remake. That's just an example of making a bad game better. But in this video, I have 5 examples of different games I want to talk about in terms of games that are not considered very good by the general masses that could be made a lot better with remakes. And of course, what really spawned this video, as you're seeing here and listening to here, is Sonic 06, right? As a big Sonic fan, we could talk about this a little bit, but the director of the Shadow Generation story, that campaign in the recent Sonic Cross Shadow Generations remaster, mentioned that he would be down for remaking Sonic 06 because, and I think he realizes this, where Sonic 06 has actually some really cool parts to it. It is a sloppy mess of a game. It was rushed out to meet the holiday 2006 deadline, and as a result, there's got a lot of bugs, a lot of glitches. The story is really not great. It's very awkward dialogue, but also just the idea of Sonic and a human girl making out. It's a whole thing. So I don't really know what they were doing there. But there are definitely some things about this game that are very rough around the edges. And like I said, it's not considered to be by the masses to be a great game. I can't say it's a good game for sure. I get enjoyment out of it, some of that because of the cringe, but also some actually good moments. Some of Sonic's and Shadow's gameplay can be fun. Silver is pretty much a slog, but you could easily have a remake fix up Silver for sure. We see what Project 06, the fan game, has done for that game, has made it a lot more fun to play. At its core, this is Adventure 3, and I don't think fans want to admit that. They'll say, oh, Sonic Heroes is Sonic Adventure 3. Oh, Sonic Unleashed is Sonic Adventure 3 because it's called Sonic World Adventure in Japan. Or is it Japan? Is it Europe? Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. No. Sonic 06 is the true Sonic Adventure 3. No one wants to admit it, but it is, because of the gameplay style is almost identical in terms of structure and how Sonic feels to play to that game. And unfortunately, because it did so poorly, Sega got scared of that gameplay formula. And to this day, we're getting, that's what spurred the Boost Sonic gameplay, starting with Unleashed and Rush on the handheld side, So a remake of this game would be great. And honestly could be a good way for them to test the waters without making a Sonic Adventure 3. Now, in terms of sales, that's the big thing with remaking bad games, right? Is like sales potential. You don't know if it necessarily be good. I honestly think a remake of Sonic 06, because of how infamous it is, I think it would actually sell. Like, I don't know if it wouldn't sell like hotcakes, but I think it would actually sell because people would take a look and be like, oh, wait a minute. Like, remember this cringe game back from 2006? Who knows, maybe for the 20th anniversary of this game, but it's definitely, like, at its core, there is some really good gameplay features. It is an adventure game at its core. It's just super rough around the edges. Trim out the extra crap. The soundtrack's fantastic. The visuals are honestly really good for the time. And I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of cool stuff. I personally really like Mephiles in the game. I know not everybody does, but I think Mephiles is the best part about the game in terms of the story. There's some really cool stuff they could do with him. So yeah, I don't know. I think there really is a lot redeemable about this game that I don't think Sonic fans always want to admit. Would I trust Sega to do a good remake of it? That's another story. I don't know. But hey, if the director of Shadow Generations is anything to go by, it sounds like maybe there is some interest. Even if it's just with him and no one else, sounds like there might be some interest there. But that is the main game I wanted to talk about here in terms of remaking a bad game. I think a game like Sonic 06, I think, could work really well, especially if it plays like the control style of Shadow Generations. I think that would work super duper well. Definitely has a lot of potential there. This next one I'm not super familiar with because I haven't played it myself. And that is Mario & Luigi Partners in Time. Right? I'm literally just getting my feet wet now in the Mario & Luigi series for the first time with Brothership, which came out very recently as of this recording. And I've always heard this one is a bit of the black sheep in this series. Right? I hear great things about Superstar Saga. I hear glowing reviews about Bowser's Inside Story. I hear Dream Team is generally well received by fans. I guess Paper Jam is kind of whatever. But this is weird because this was the second game in the series, and it definitely has its fans. But I think it was just something about the partner gimmick and like the idea of having like the brothers when they were younger, like the baby versions of the brothers. Like, I don't think it, from what I hear, was implemented super well. Definitely let me know if you played Partners in Time in the comments below what you think. Because like, at its core, right? Like Mario & Luigi, I could tell from this trailer and also from what I've played at Brothership so far, there is a really fun gameplay loop at its core. So it really seems like the issue comes down to like the new gimmicks or new mechanics of Partners in Time that make it not so great. So that seems like something that they could definitely, you know, clean up a little bit, you know, and do a remake of it. Will they ever do it? I don't know. I'm kind of surprised that before Alpha Dream went bankrupt, I'm surprised that they didn't remake Partners in Time. Now, I mean, it makes sense in hindsight because they remade the two fan favorite games to try to at least salvage some profits, but unfortunately still went bankrupt. So I'm sure if they tried to remake this game, I don't think a remake of this game would sell well. I think this is an example of financially it just doesn't make sense, right? But I don't know. I feel like it would benefit from maybe some of the more modern enhancements of the more modern Mario & Luigi games, and also clean up some of the stuff that made the original not so great. But like I said, definitely if you've played Partners in Time before, let me know what your personal issues with it, or if you're a big fan of it, let me know in the comments below. But just wanted to shout that one out quickly. That's probably the one I'm the least familiar with here. All right. You guys are lucky. I almost put the original NES Zelda on this little batch here, but I know that's a really hot take. I do not like the original NES Zelda. I really don't. Granted, a remake of that, would that just be like A Link to the Past? I don't know. Maybe a remake of that wouldn't be anything super interesting. However, a remake of Zelda 2, once again, a black sheep in the franchise, is considered by many fans. This is one of the only Zelda games I haven't played, and I'm kind of hesitant to play it because of how difficult I heard it is. It's really not a motivating factor for me to even try to check it out. And I've just heard there's a lot of issues with like just gameplay balance, and at its core, it's very interesting, right? Having like a side-scroller Zelda game, right? I mean, this was only the second Zelda game ever made, I believe, unless there was some like Satellaview games that I'm missing. Just very, very unique game being that early on in the Zelda franchise. And there's some interesting stuff there with like the side-scroller aspect of it, right? They kind of took some ideas of that, like for Link's Awakening with the 2D sections and some of those dungeons, and like to have the game be pretty much fully 2D, except have the overworld map. I don't know, like, I think Zelda's always going to sell well. So I think a remake of this game would sell well. I really do. Because it's Zelda, right? But like, this would be real, I don't know, I just think that would be super interesting. This to me might be one of the most interesting potential remakes out of all the bad games considered not to be great on this list, you know? Just like, it would be so unique to have. It would stand out amongst all the other Zelda games, and to have it more accessible, balance out the gameplay difficulty a little more, and I think it would be an interesting remake to have. Will Nintendo do it? Probably not, but it'd be cool to see. If we get another Zelda remake, it's probably going to be the Oracle games by Grezzo in the Link's Awakening engine. I think that's still totally possible. But I think this would be the more interesting one. Not that the Oracle games aren't interesting, but like, this is such a weird anomaly of a game, right, in the Zelda history. It would be honestly really interesting to see this show up. So there's your little Zelda shout out here. This is going to be the most hot take of the video, and I know people are going to get mad at me for this. Earlier this year, if you watch this channel, you might know, earlier this year, I live streamed the original Pac-Man World 2. Now, a couple years ago, as of this recording, I live streamed the repack, if you will, of the original Pac-Man World, right? They had the remake, they called the repack, and played that, and I honestly really enjoyed that. And that was more of like a isometric side-scroller, kind of almost, and I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And then I live-streamed Pac-Man World 2 earlier this year. This game has the potential to be so much better. I know Repack didn't sell super well, but I would legitimately love if Bandai Namco remade this game. Because at its core, there is a really solid 3D platformer here, 3D platformer collectathon here. The issue, the controls are just all over the place, and the level design is kind of off. Like, I don't know. There's something about playing through this game. It just felt so aged, right? It's so of its era, and the controls were just kind of slippery, which that could be easily fixed by a remake. At its core, there was a lot good to this game, you know? And like, I recognize why people love this game as one of their favorite 3D platformer collectathons, but it's rough around the edges. You know what I mean? It really, if it got a little more polish, more refined controls, like the environments are super detailed. I love collecting those dots on the trail, like through the sky. Like, that's super fun. There is a lot of potential with this one. There really is. And it's just, unfortunately, there's mainly the feel of movement, the controls. That's a big thing for me in games. And it just didn't feel great to play it. This game did not feel great to play it. And by the end, I was just so frustrated. I just wanted it to be over. I almost didn't finish it on the stream because I got so frustrated with it. I know that's definitely a hot take. Let me know if you have similar thoughts on this game in the comments below, or if you love this game, let me know why. I would love to see them do a repack. I think this is the one to do. This is, I think, the fan favorite Pac-Man World game. So do a repack of this one, see how it goes. I know I don't think repack sold super well for the first game, but it would just be great to see. Will it happen? I don't think it's out of the question, but probably not for a bit. We'll see. Final one that I have for this video. This also might be kind of a hot take, but I don't think this one is necessarily received super well. And this is one I have played. This is Yoshi's Story, which was originally on the N64. It has its fans for sure. I didn't mind the game. What I really liked about it was just like the idea of the structure behind it, because this game kind of makes you like replay it multiple times, which is honestly interesting to get like the final ending. You kind of have to replay it a few times, and it's presented in like a storybook setting. So like the idea is really honestly kind of creative. I really like how they attempt that, but there's something that just feels off, especially compared to like Yoshi's Island, or from what I've heard, or Woolly World, right? Where those games to me are really good. This one was a weird anomaly of like, it had some interesting ideas with like the collecting the fruit in specific levels, and you know, progressing through the storybook pretty quickly, but then also like allowing for replayability. I just think if you apply the template you have in Woolly World and Crafted World to this game, I think that can make it really good. So it would have to be a remake at that point, because those games are designed a little differently than this, whereas this is like, I don't know, it's similar, but this is almost more of a simplified version of Yoshi's Island, if that's the right way to describe it. Let me know in the comments below how you would distinguish between like this game and Yoshi's Island, but it feels different, and I think it's just that it's a lot simpler. It was definitely, they were really targeting kids with this game. That seemed to be the main demographic, whereas like Yoshi's Island, I mean, of course, but it seems like there's a lot more challenge in that game compared to Yoshi's Story, which, I don't know, the structure was interesting. I think it could be really cool if done right, but, you know, throw it in that engine, remake it from the ground up. After this was a weird one I wanted to throw in here. Let me know your thoughts on Yoshi's Story in the comments below, but these are just a few examples of games that I think could be made even better with remakes, right? And not everybody's going to agree with me. At the end of the day, to wrap this video up, like, companies are afraid of remaking bad games, but if you think about it, besides like bringing old games, making them new again, kind of like, for example, Final Fantasy VII Remake is the big example I can think of. Besides cases like that, like, bad games should be the ones to be remade. Because, you know, we could remake good games. We can get Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta. We can get Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. You know, we can get Sonic Adventure remakes, I guess, if that ever happens. You know what I mean? But, like, at the end of the day, like, if bad games can be remade into good games, if you can salvage something from that original gameplay experience that, like, had potential and just was rough around the edges, had some annoying gameplay mechanics that could be taken out or modified, you know, it's worth salvaging, in my opinion, you know? Especially, like, if they remade Sonic 06, if Sega remade Sonic 06 just to bring it full circle, like, and it ended up being actually, like, really good, like, one of the best newer modern Sonic games, you know how crazy that would be? Like, to come full circle 20 years after, you know, the original Sonic 06 came out, like, that, I don't know. Like, Sonic 06 has its fans because they recognize the potential of this game. But, you know, we also have to recognize how crusty some of these games can be. But if remade, potentially, I don't think it's out of the question. You know, maybe salvage something from it. That's kind of the point of this video. We can salvage some stuff from bad games. You know, just if developers, publishers are willing to put in the funds. Not that they're always willing to. In fact, usually they aren't for these kinds of games. But hey, you know what? If they did, could be pretty neat. Could be some fun things to salvage and kind of redeem some of these games. But with that, that is going to do it for this video. Let me know your thoughts on all 5 of these games that I mentioned in the comments below. Are there any other examples that you can think of games that either have been remade that were considered well and now are a lot better to play, or games that, you know, aren't received very well that you would like to see remade, that you think would have potential as a new game in the modern era? But with that, thank you all so much for watching. I will catch you all on the next video or live stream. Until then, hey, bad games are worth something, you know? Banjo-Tooie's bad. I said it.